Today we're recapping the sci-fi romance movie, Passengers. Spoilers ahead. The movie begins with a spaceship, Starship Avalon, journeying to space. It's transporting 5,000 hibernating humans to a new planet called Homestead 2. Avalon is 30 years into its 120-year journey when it encounters a meteor storm. The ship's force field withstands the smaller meteors but takes heavy damage when a larger one hits. While trying to repair itself automatically, one of the hibernating pods containing mechanical engineer Jim Preston malfunctions, and he awakens. A female avatar greets Preston with a cheery voice. She tells them they would be arriving at Homestead 2 and that it's normal for him to feel disoriented after such a long time in hibernation. After that, Preston's wristband is scanned, and the avatar leads him to his room. The next day, Preston contemplates what to wear when he meets the other passengers. He leaves his room to go to the cafeteria, where he realizes he's the only one. From the cafeteria, Preston goes for an orientation session where he's taught about life as a colonist on the new planet Homestead. To his surprise, Preston discovers he's the only one there. When he asks the computer-generated female avatar why he's the only one, she doesn't seem to understand his question. Jim Preston finds the main concourse and goes to the information kiosk, presumably to find help or information. Unfortunately, Preston finds neither. He goes to another where he discovers he can send a message to the parent company on Earth. Preston is, however, warned that sending the message will be expensive. Preston sends it anyway, only to discover his message will only get to Earth in 16 years, and he can only get a reply in 39 years. This makes a total of 55 years for Preston to send and receive a response to his message. He realizes he's all alone on the ship. Despondent, Preston walks away. He's moping around when he catches a glimpse of a man behind a bar. Excited, Preston jogs towards the man and starts talking to him, only for him to discover that the bartender's a robot programmed to dish out behind the bar advice. Disappointed again, Preston walks back to his cramped cabin to get some sleep. The next day, Preston goes to the cafeteria to get a cup of coffee after trying unsuccessfully to get other options. Preston finds the manual for the pods, goes back to his pod and tries to fix it. When he enters the pod again, Preston finds out the pod isn't working despite trying to fix it. Preston sees where the crew members are hibernating and tries to open it. Cinema recap here. We've got a little challenge that'll take 5 seconds, and it will change your life forever. You ready? All you gotta do is like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, and you'll receive 10 free years of good luck. It's as simple as that. But his wristband doesn't have the proper clearance. The next scene shows Preston trying different methods to open the chamber, but none of them are successful. Then the diagnostic system of the Starship Avalon indicates that there's a fault with the elevators. Preston, on his way to Arthur, the bartender, discovers the automated door refuses to close. After conversing with Arthur, Preston breaks into a more luxurious quarter and enjoys amenities hitherto unavailable in his cramped cabin. He enjoys playing basketball, eating better food, watching movies, and a dance-off. Some time has passed as Preston now has a full beard. He's clearly bored with the things that gave him excitement before, and he's letting himself go. One day, Preston is drunk, angry, and depressed, walks through the hibernating pods and discovers a spacesuit chamber. He puts one on and decides to take a spacewalk. As Preston walks out of the ship, a lifeline attaches itself to his suit. Preston stands on the edge of the ship and contemplates the vastness of space. Preston steps off the edge and floats in space. The whole thing overwhelms him, and he begins to cry. Later, Preston walks back into the ship, dejected. Preston unsuits, starts walking away, then he changes his mind and walks back towards the airlock unsuited. He opens the door and thinks about ending it all by going into space without a suit. Unable to carry out the suicide, Preston runs back to the chamber holding the pods and trips on a bottle of alcohol he had thrown earlier in anger. Preston lays on the floor trying to gather himself. When he stands, his gaze falls on a beautiful woman who's hibernating. Her name is Aurora Lane, a writer from New York City. Preston can't take his eyes off her. He's clearly smitten by her. Preston goes to find more about Aurora. In the video bio, she says she's traveling to Homestead 2 to explore and learn about people who decided to leave Earth and become colonists. Preston becomes obsessed with Aurora, sitting by her pod while watching her videos. He finds her funny and begins to talk to Arthur about her while reading some of his works. Preston's watching her video again in his room when his eyes fall on the pod manual. After considering something, Preston takes the manual and goes to Arthur. He has decided to wake Aurora from her hibernation. Arthur doesn't think it's a good idea, but Preston is determined. He's been alone for a year, and he needs a companion. Preston gets himself in shape and contemplates waking Aurora. He shaves, puts on clean clothes, and works on the pod. So Aurora comes awake. Before Aurora opens her eyes, Preston runs out of the room. The female avatar appears just like in Preston's case. Preston is shocked as he arrives in the room, hiding the pod manual in his drawers. He goes back to the main ship where he runs into her. Aurora is confused, and she doesn't know where everyone is. He's captivated by her beauty and tells her the hibernating pods must have opened by accident, and they're not in Homestead 2 yet. He tells her that he's been awake for a year, but leaves out the part where he's the one that woke her up. When Aurora realizes that she won't be seeing Homestead, she panics and tries to run back to her pod. Preston prevents her from doing so. Preston walks her down to her cabin, and he begins to feel conflicted. Looking for advice, Preston seeks out Arthur at the bar, making him promise not to tell Aurora he woke her up. In the next scene, Aurora wakes up from a nightmare. She goes to the main concourse, trying to find out how to get things done when Preston approaches. He offers to show her around and takes her to the cafeteria. Meanwhile, Avalon's diagnostic system indicate that there is critical error in its core reactor. Preston and Aurora are in the cafeteria having breakfast. Aurora, not pleased with Preston's breakfast selections, decided to do it for him. They have a pleasant breakfast, enjoying each other's company, until Aurora wants to find a way to get into the crew members' chamber. She tries to enter the chamber. Like Preston, she's unsuccessful. This frustrates her. Aurora makes use of her time aboard the ship, keeping a journal, jogging, and swimming. She approaches Preston one day and begins to quiz him on why he decided to leave Earth to become a colonist. Preston says he likes to make and fix things himself. On Earth, when things get damaged, they get replaced, not fixed. He says he plans to live in a house he built himself. When he asks what her plans are, she says that she plans to spend a year on Homestead 2, traveling and talking to colonists, getting their stories. When she's done, Aurora intends to go back to Earth. Both of them start getting to know each other and enjoying each other's company. They go to the restaurant for dinner, then to the dance-off, then to a basketball game, and then to a bar, where he introduces her to Arthur. They develop a routine of dance-offs, basketball, watching movies, and visiting the bar. Aurora is studying the stars from a window when she sees a replica of the Empire State Building Preston has made for her beside her cup of coffee. She's touched. Jim asks her out to dinner. Aurora gladly accepts, replying to his question with, "love to." Preston's dressed up. He goes to Aurora's apartment, where he sees her. He's blown away. Preston takes her first to the bar, where they have some drinks. Then he takes her to the restaurant for dinner. As they're having a discussion, Preston invites her to the space chamber. They both suit up and walk out of the airlock towards the entrance of the ship. Preston holds Aurora's hands, switches off their magnetic boots, and leads her into the void. The experience serves as an aphrodisiac for both of them. They kiss as soon as they get back and make love in Preston's room. The next day, both of them are in the cafeteria when Preston tells Aurora she is the most beautiful woman he's ever seen. When he asks a staring Aurora what she's thinking, she clears the table and goes to his side. They end up in his room again. Both of them enjoy their time together, jogging, eating at various restaurants, and drinking at the bar. Together, they explore the inside of the Avalon. Their life seems perfect. They enjoy being together and the amenities on the ship, and even enjoy the wonderful view of traveling close to the sun. On Aurora's birthday, Preston decides that they should have a date. Preston also decides to propose to her. He makes a ring. They're at a bar. Aurora tells Arthur that she and Preston have no secrets. Preston agrees before he leaves, and Arthur lets it slip that Preston woke her up intentionally. When Preston arrives, Aurora asks if he really did wake her up. Seeing that the secret's out, Preston admits that he did. Aurora is distraught. Preston tries to apologize and explain, but Aurora tells him to stay away from her. Both of them go their separate ways. She throws a vase against the window and breaks down crying. Preston goes to his room in sadness. The next day, Preston meets Aurora in the cafeteria and tries to apologize. Aurora stands and leaves, not wanting to listen to him. That night, a sleeping Preston is woken by a livid Aurora who proceeds to hit him severely. Preston doesn't try to defend himself, even when Aurora lifts a crowbar and tries to hit him with it. She can't hit him, even though Preston isn't defending himself. She leaves his room. The next day, Aurora is jogging around the ship when Preston tries to talk to her over the PA system. Aurora still refuses to listen, yelling at Preston that he ruined her life. After a while, Preston notices that the ship's light starts to flicker and the camera pans to the diagnostic screen, which indicates that there's a critical error on the ship. The ship starts to misbehave, trapping Preston in an elevator and pouring food all over the floor in the cafeteria. Aurora and Preston hear a voice and they hurry to the main concourse, where they meet Gus, the deck crew chief. Gus's pod developed a fault like Preston, so he has woken up a little early. He informs them that the pods aren't supposed to act the way they did, which means there's something wrong with the ship. Gus is using his wristband to get them into the command center. He discovers that the ship's automatic diagnostic isn't working, which means the three of them have to check all the decks for faults manually. Preston and Gus head to the pod chamber, where Gus discovers Preston's complicity in waking Aurora. When Gus informs Aurora, she tells him she knows. When he leaves the pod chamber, he coughs up blood. That night, Aurora can't sleep, so she decides to go for a swim. While she's swimming, the Avalon suddenly loses power, and there's a loss of gravity. Aurora tries to escape the ball of water and almost drowns. Preston and Gus are floating on the beds when suddenly, gravity returns, and Aurora is able to escape. The three of them gather in the command center. They see the various points of problem within the ship. When Gus calls for a timeline for Avalon's system failures, they discover it started 2 years ago when Preston was awoken. They also see the various locations on the ship where there are problems. One of the locations is the main engine area. They go to the engine area for a manual inspection, but as they get there, Gus collapses. Preston and Aurora put Gus into the auto dock, an automatic scanner, to check what's wrong with him. They discover there are 612 disorders found in various parts of his body, and sadly, there's no cure. They speculate that the malfunctioning pods are the likely cause. Not deterred, Gus puts on his uniform, ready to die. He gives Preston and Aurora his wristband so they can have access to all areas of the ship and fix all the problems. Before they can start, the engine starts to fail and things quickly go awry. Even Arthur's acting strangely, breaking glass and harming himself. Aurora tries to stop him, but nothing works until Preston removes his power and he shuts down. Checking through the main engine area, they discover several holes have been punched into Avalon by the asteroids. One of the holes almost leads to Aurora being sucked out of the ship, but Preston, who's also battling being jammed by the doors, passes a tablet to her, which she uses to cover the hole. Aurora and Preston notice that the temperature has started rising. He tries to find the cause, only to find that the asteroid has also damaged the main reactor. And there's now something wrong with the exhaust vent. Preston tries to fix it through the manual override, but that doesn't work. Preston knows that the only way to fix it, to save the ship and the lives of others, is to go outside and fix it. He gives Aurora the wristband while he suits up. Before Preston puts on his helmet, he and Aurora share a moment. As Preston walks to the door, Aurora tells him to come back to her as she couldn't live alone on the ship. While Preston is walking up the exhaust vent, Aurora goes back to the reactor to try the manual override again, but finds the handle too hot. Then, an explosion causes debris to puncture her arm. Preston tells Aurora to try the manual override again while he tries to keep the vent open. Aurora disagrees, knowing the fire could kill Preston. They argue, but Preston's insistent. He tells her to do it. Crying, Aurora pulls the lever, and Preston does his part. It works, but Preston's lifeline breaks, and he's tossed into space without anything to hold on to. His suit is also punctured. Aurora, who doesn't know what's happening, is initially ecstatic until Preston bids her goodbye and falls unconscious. She hurries to get a spacesuit and pulls Preston in by his lifeline after failing to grab him. She carries him to the auto dock, which certifies Preston's dead. Aurora uses Gus's wristband and overrides the code to order auto dock to bring him back to life. Preston survives, and Aurora is delighted. When everything is back to normal on the ship, Preston tells Aurora he could have used the override function to put Aurora back in hibernation if he uses auto dock. The only problem is that only one of them can hibernate. The other has to wait on the ship alone. Preston offers her the opportunity. Aurora rejects it and chooses to stay with Preston. The scene cuts to 88 years later. The rest of the hibernating humans are waking up. They walk to the main concourse to find a huge tree, vines, and birds. Then the humans hear Aurora telling the colonists their story and how they made a good life aboard Starship Avalon 2. This is a movie review for Passengers, produced by Columbia Pictures, L-Star Capital, Village Roadshow Pictures, Wanda Pictures, and Original Film. Chris Pratt, Jennifer Lawrence, and Lawrence Fishburne starred in the movie.